Everyone ignored the twins who were asking for help for their sick mother until the doctor followed them and was horrified by what he saw. The heavy air of the small apartment was cut by the muffled sobs of two identical girls. Emma and Sophie, 12-year-old twins, were kneeling beside an unmoving figure on the bed. The dim light filtering through the tattered curtains revealed the pale, sweaty face of their mother, Clara. "Mom, please wake up," whispered Emma, her voice trembling with fear. Sophie, holding Clara's cold hand, looked at her sister with wide, terrified eyes. The silence that followed was broken only by the relentless ticking of a wall clock, a countdown to an imminent disaster that the girls barely comprehended. Sophie stood up abruptly, heading to the phone on the table nearby. Her small hands trembled as she picked up the receiver, only to be met with the deadly silence of a disconnected line. The cruel reality hit them. There was no way to call for help. "What are we going to do?" asked Sophie, panic rising in her voice. Emma looked out the window at the city waking up outside, oblivious to the drama unfolding within those thin walls. The twins looked at each other, a silent decision passing between them. With determination born of desperation, they began to search the apartment for anything that might help. Money, medicine, any sign of hope. As they rummaged through drawers and cabinets, flashbacks of happy moments with Clara flooded their minds. Memories of shared laughter over simple dinners, comforting hugs after nightmares, whispered promises that they would always be together, no matter what. A muffled cry from Sophie made Emma run to the bathroom. There, hidden behind old towels, was a medicine box. The girls examined the bottles with incomprehensible labels, their young faces contorted in confusion and frustration. "These must help, right?" asked Emma, more to herself than to her sister. Sophie just shook her head, uncertain. Returning to the bedroom, the twins tried to get Clara to swallow one of the pills, but she remained unconscious, her breathing increasingly shallow. The distant sound of an ambulance made the girls' hearts leap, only to sink again as the vehicle drove past their building. The reality of their situation hit them like a punch. They were alone in this fight. Emma looked out the window again, watching people hurrying by on the street below. Doctors, nurses, adults who could help, all so close yet unreachable. "We have to go outside," said Emma, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. "We have to find someone who can help Mom." Sophie hesitated, looking at Clara. "But what if she wakes up and we're not here? What if she—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "We have no choice," replied Emma, taking her sister's hand. "It's Mom's only chance." The twins exchanged one last look, years of mutual understanding and unconditional love passing between them in an instant. With a gentle kiss on Clara's forehead, they headed for the door. As the lock clicked behind them, the girls found themselves in a dark, foul-smelling hallway. The world outside, once so familiar, now seemed like an alien and hostile place. Descending the creaky stairs, Emma and Sophie emerged onto the busy sidewalk. The noise of the city enveloped them. Car horns, loud conversations, the distant roar of the subway. For a moment, they were paralyzed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their task. Then, with a squeeze of hands to encourage each other, the twins took the first step into the unknown. Their eyes scanned the faces of passers-by, looking for someone, anyone, who could be their salvation. Little did they know that their actions that day would trigger a series of events that would not only change their lives, but also touch the heart of an entire city. As they ventured into the indifferent streets, a question hung in the air. In a world that seemed to have forgotten compassion, would anyone hear the silent plea of two desperate girls? The relentless morning sun beat down on the crowded sidewalks as Emma and Sophie pushed through the crowd. Their wide, frightened eyes starkly contrasted with the indifference on the faces of the hurried adults. "Please help! Our mother is very sick!" Emma shouted, her voice almost lost in the city's buzz. Sophie, always the shyer of the two, timidly tugged at the sleeves of passers-by, only to be brusquely pushed away. A man in a suit, talking energetically on his cell phone, nearly knocked Sophie over. He shot an irritated glance at the girl before continuing on his way, not even slowing down. Emma grabbed her sister's hand, pulling her close. "We can't give up," she whispered, more to herself than to Sophie. The twins approached a newsstand where an elderly lady was flipping through a magazine. "Mom, please," pleaded Emma. "Our mother needs a doctor. Can you help us?" The woman looked up, her wrinkled face contorting in an expression of distrust. "You two again. I told you I don't have any change. Go ask somewhere else." Confused and hurt, the girls walked away. "She thinks we're beggars," murmured Sophie, tears shining in her eyes. They continued their journey, hope dwindling with each person who ignored or pushed them away. A group of teenagers laughed at them when Emma tried to explain their situation. "Hey, look at these kids trying to scam us," mocked one of them, making the others laugh. Fear began to mix with frustration. Sophie looked up at the sky, wondering how much time their mother had left. The image of Clara, pale and still in bed, haunted her thoughts. They reached a busy square where a man was handing out flyers. His face lit up as he saw the twins approaching, but quickly fell when he realized they weren't potential customers. "Sir, please, our mother," Emma began, but was interrupted. "Look, I can't help. I have work to do," he said, turning to approach other pedestrians. Hours passed and fatigue began to weigh on the girls. Their feet hurt, and hunger gnawed at their stomachs. Sophie stumbled, nearly falling, and Emma caught her. "Maybe we should go back," suggested Sophie, her voice breaking. "What if Mum woke up and is looking for us?" Emma hesitated, torn between the need to keep searching for help and the desire to return to their mother. It was at that moment that they spotted a hospital at the end of the street. With renewed energy, the twins ran towards the white building, their hearts racing with hope. But upon reaching the emergency entrance, they were stopped by a security guard. Hey, where do you think you're going?" he asked, his tone stern. "Our mother is sick. We need a doctor," exclaimed Emma, breathless. The guard frowned. "Where is your mother? I don't see anyone with you." "She's at home. We couldn't bring her," explained Sophie, her voice trembling. The man sighed, his expression softening slightly. "Look, I can't let you in like this. I need an adult or an ambulance to bring the patient." "But we don't have money for an ambulance," cried Emma, the desperation evident in her voice. The guard seemed genuinely troubled but firm. "I'm sorry, girls. Those are the rules. Maybe you can call a relative." Defeated, the twins walked away from the hospital, the last spark of hope extinguished. They sat on the curb, hugging each other, silent tears streaming down their faces. It was then that they noticed a man standing nearby, watching them with curiosity. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes, but there was something in his gaze that made them hesitate. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emma and Sophie exchanged looks, years of warnings about talking to strangers echoing in their minds, but desperation spoke louder. "Our mother is very sick," Emma began cautiously. "We're trying to find someone who can help." The man frowned, looking genuinely concerned. "Where is she?" "At home," replied Sophie. "We couldn't wake her up this morning." The man was silent for a moment, seeming to ponder something. Finally, he spoke. "My name is Dr. Andrew. I'm a doctor. If you want, I can take a look at your mother." The girls looked at each other, a mixture of hope and apprehension on their faces. Could this man be the help they had been searching for, or just another disappointment in a day full of them? "How do we know we can trust you?" asked Emma, her voice mixing distrust and hope. Dr. Andrew smiled sadly. "You don't know. But I promise I just want to help. I can show you my hospital ID if you want." The twins hesitated, weighing their options. The city around them continued its frenetic pace, indifferent to the drama unfolding on that sidewalk. Finally, with a nod to Sophie, Emma made a decision. "All right," she said, standing up. "Please, help us." As the twins led Dr. Andrew back home, they couldn't imagine how this encounter would change the course of their lives forever. The Stone City had finally shown a glimpse of compassion, but the real test was yet to come. Dr. Andrew walked a few steps behind the twins, closely observing their synchronized movements and the way they communicated almost without words. His years of medical experience had taught him to read people, and these girls exuded a peculiar mix of fear and determination that intrigued him. "How long has your mother been sick?" he asked, breaking the tense silence. Emma looked back, hesitant. She hasn't been well for weeks, but today, her voice faltered. Today was different, Sophie completed, her voice almost a whisper. Andrew nodded, his face a mask of professional concern. Internally, however, he wrestled with a wave of conflicting emotions. He was about to retire, tired of fighting a healthcare system that seemed more concerned with bureaucracy than patient well-being. And now, here he was, following two unknown children to God knows where. They turned onto a narrow street, moving away from the busy avenues. The contrast was stark. Run-down buildings replaced the shiny facades, and the air was heavy with the smell of uncollected trash. "Is this where you live?" Andrew couldn't help but ask, surprised by the sudden change in scenery. Sophie nodded affirmatively, a blush of shame tinging her cheeks. Emma, on the other hand, raised her chin defiantly. "Yes, any problem?" Andrew quickly shook his head. No, just didn't expect it." As they climbed the creaky stairs of an old building, Andrew noticed damp stains on the walls and heard the distant cry of a baby. His heart tightened. How many other families were silently suffering behind these worn doors? On the third floor, the girls stopped in front of a door with peeling paint. Emma pulled a key from her pocket, her hands trembling slightly as she inserted it into the lock. "Doctor," she said, turning to face him with surprising intensity for someone so young, "please help our mother." Andrew nodded solemnly, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had just assumed. "I'll do my best," he promised. The door creaked open, revealing a small but clean and organized apartment. The air was heavy and stuffy, with a faint odor of illness that Andrew recognized instantly. The twins led him to a room at the back. There, lying on a simple bed, was a middle-aged woman, her pale skin covered by a thin layer of sweat. Andrew approached quickly, years of training taking over. He checked the woman's pulse, her breathing, the temperature of her skin. "What's her name?" he asked, not taking his eyes off his patient. "Clara," answered Sophie, her voice trembling. "Her name is Clara." Andrew continued his examination, occasionally asking the girls about Clara's symptoms, how long she had been like this, if she had any pre-existing medical conditions. The answers were vague and incomplete, but he managed to form a picture of the situation. After a few minutes, he turned to the twins, who were watching him anxiously. "She needs to go to a hospital," he said firmly. Panic crossed the girls' faces. But we don't have money," stammered Emma. Andrew frowned, an internal struggle clearly visible on his face. He knew the costs, the bureaucracy, the endless queues in the public emergency room. But he also knew that Clara needed care he couldn't provide there. "Leave that to me," he said finally. "I'll make some calls." As Andrew left the room to make the calls, the twins cuddled up next to their mother, holding her hands and whispering words of comfort. In the hallway, Andrew dialed frantically, pulling all the favors he could. Years of career had given him contacts, but also taught him the limits of the system. Each node he heard from the other end of the line left him more frustrated. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he managed to secure an ambulance and a spot at the hospital where he worked. It wouldn't be easy, and he knew he would have to face a mountain of paperwork and questioning, but it was a start. Returning to the room, he found Emma and Sophie exactly as he had left them, clinging to their mother, as if their lives depended on it. And, in a way, they did. "Help is on the way," he announced, seeing relief flood the girls' faces. But as they waited for the ambulance, a new concern arose. What would happen to the twins? They were clearly minors, and without a guardian. Andrew looked at the girls, so young and so brave, and made another decision that would change his life. "You will come with me," he said firmly. "Child, I won't leave you alone." The sound of the ambulance sirens began to grow louder, increasing with each second. Andrew knew he was about to get involved in something much bigger than a simple medical consultation, but looking at the hopeful faces of Emma and Sophie, he knew he couldn't do otherwise. The city outside might be stone, but here, in this small apartment, a flame of compassion had been lit, and Andrew was determined not to let it go out. The shrill sound of the ambulance sirens echoed through the narrow streets as Dr. Andrew and the twins hurried down the building stairs. Clara, still unconscious, was carried on a stretcher by two efficient paramedics. "Are you relatives?" one of the paramedics asked, casting a questioning look at Andrew and the girls. Before Andrew could respond, Emma stepped forward. "We're her daughters," she said firmly, holding Sophie's hand. "And he's our family doctor." Andrew felt a pang of admiration for the girl's quick lie, though part of him worried about how easily she told it. He nodded in confirmation, deciding to deal with the ethical implications of the situation later. On the way to the hospital, Andrew watched the twins, who squeezed into the ambulance seat, their eyes never leaving Clara's pale face. There was something about the dynamic between the three that intrigued him, a connection that seemed to go beyond the simple mother-daughter bond. Arriving at the hospital, Clara was quickly taken to the emergency room. Andrew used his influence to ensure she received immediate attention, ignoring the surprised looks from his colleagues upon seeing him accompanied by two children. "Doctor." "Andrew," called a nurse, approaching with a clipboard. "We need the patient's information for the record." Andrew hesitated, realizing he knew surprisingly little about Clara or the girls. He turned to Emma and Sophie, who seemed even smaller and more vulnerable under the hospital's fluorescent lights. "Girls, I need you to tell me everything you know about your mother's medical condition," he said gently, guiding them to a more private area of the waiting room. Emma and Sophie exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Sophie spoke, her voice almost a whisper. She's not really our mother." Andrew felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. "What do you mean?" Emma, seeing the confusion on the doctor's face, continued. "Clara found us 5 years ago. We were alone, abandoned. She took us home and has been taking care of us ever since." Andrew's mind spun with the implications of this revelation. Unofficial adoption, kidnapping. The possibilities were alarming. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "We were scared," replied Sophie, tears shining in her eyes. "Clara always told us to keep it a secret. She said if anyone found out, we would be separated." Andrew closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the situation. When he opened them again, he saw the fear on the girls' faces. Fear of being separated. Fear of losing the only person who had cared for them. "Listen," he said, leaning down to be at eye level with the girls. "I promise I'll do everything I can to help you and Clara, but I need to know the truth to do that. Can you trust me?" The twins looked at each other again, seeming to reach a silent decision. Emma nodded and began to tell their story. They had been abandoned in a park at just 7 years old. Clara, who passed by there every day on her way to work, noticed them for several days in a row. Worried, she finally approached the girls and, upon hearing their situation, decided to take them home. "She tried to find our real family," explained Emma, "but there were no records of us anywhere. It was like we didn't exist." Andrew listened, astonished. The story was both moving and deeply disturbing. Clara had clearly acted out of compassion, but in doing so had placed herself and the girls in a precarious legal situation. "And what about Clara's health?" asked Andrew, trying to get back to the more urgent matter. Sophie bit her lip. "She's been working a lot in 2 jobs. Sometimes she would come home coughing and with a fever, but she always said she was fine, that we couldn't worry." Andrew nodded, the pieces starting to fall into place. Chronic exhaustion, possible exposure to toxic substances at work, neglect of her own health. All of this could have contributed to Clara's current state. Andrew nodded, the pieces starting to fall into place. Chronic exhaustion, possible exposure to toxic substances at work, neglect of her own health. All of this could have contributed to Clara's current state. At that moment, an emergency doctor approached. "Dr. Andrew, can you come here for a moment?" Andrew stood up, casting a reassuring look at the twins. "Pues stay here, I'll be back soon." Following his colleague, Andrew was led to an examination room where Clara was being treated. The machines beeped softly, monitoring her vital signs. "What do we have?" Andrew asked, immediately switching to professional mode. The other doctor frowned, looking at the test results. "It's complicated. There are signs of severe pneumonia. but also indications of prolonged exposure to toxic chemicals. Her immune system is severely compromised. Andrew felt a knot form in his stomach. The situation was even worse than he had imagined. Returning to the waiting room, he found Emma and Sophie exactly where he had left them, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. Andrew sat down again, knowing that what he was about to say would change their lives forever. "Girls," he began gently but seriously, "we have a long road ahead, but I promise we will get through this together." The twins nodded, silent tears streaming down their faces. And there, under the cold hospital lights, an unlikely alliance was formed. A doctor about to retire and two homeless girls, united by fate and the compassion of a woman who had risked everything to save them. The clock on the waiting room wall read 2:37 a.m. Dr. Andrew was sitting between Emma and Sophie, who had finally fallen asleep, exhausted after hours of anxious waiting. He watched their young faces, marked by a premature maturity that no child should bear. A resident approached quietly, signaling for Andrew to follow. Carefully, so as not to wake the girls, he stood up and followed the young doctor to an improvised conference room. "Doctor, Clara's test results are in C," said the resident, his voice a mix of confusion and concern. "Frankly, I've never seen anything like it." Andrew took the sheets of results, his eyes quickly scanning the numbers and graphs. As he read, his frown deepened. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured. "These levels of toxicity, it's as if she had been exposed to a combination of industrial chemicals for years." The resident nodded. "And there's more. We found anomalies in her DNA that we can't explain. It's as if, as if her body was adapting to the toxins somehow." Andrew sank into a chair, his mind racing with the implications. "Where did she work?" he asked, more to himself than to the resident. "The girls mentioned 2 jobs," replied the young doctor. "A textile factory during the day and cleaning offices at night." Andrew shook his head, frustrated. Neither of these jobs would fully explain what they were seeing in Clara's tests. There was something more, a deeper mystery behind her condition. "What's the prognosis?" Andrew asked, fearing the answer. The resident hesitated. "It's hard to say. Her body is fighting, but the damage is extensive. Without knowing exactly what caused this, it's complicated to develop an effective treatment plan." Andrew thanked the resident and returned to the waiting room, his mind a storm of thoughts. As he approached, he saw that Emma was awake, her eyes shining in the dim light. "How is Mom?" she asked, her voice small and scared. Andrew sat down beside her, choosing his words carefully. "She is very sick, Emma, sicker than we initially thought, but we are doing everything we can to help her." Emma nodded, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's our fault," she whispered. "If we hadn't stayed with her, maybe she wouldn't have had to work so hard." Andrew felt his heart tighten. "No, Emma. This is not your fault. Clara made a choice, a brave and compassionate choice. She loved you and wanted to protect you." He paused, considering whether to share more. Deciding that honesty was the best path, he continued. "Emma, we need to understand better what happened to Clara. Can you tell me more about her jobs? Anything unusual that you noticed?" Emma frowned, thoughtful. "She always came home very tired, and sometimes her eyes were red and she coughed a lot. Once, I saw strange marks on her hands, like burns." Andrew absorbed this information, the pieces of the puzzle slowly fitting together. "And what about the factory where she worked? Have you ever been there?" Emma shook her head. "No, she never let us go. She said it was dangerous for children." At that moment, Sophie woke up, blinking sleepily. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice hoarse from sleep. Andrew gently repeated what he had told Emma about Clara's condition. Sophie listened silently, her face a mask of concern. "Doctor," said Sophie after a moment of hesitation, "there's something we haven't told you, something Clara made us promise never to mention." Andrew leaned forward, intrigued. "What is it, Sophie? It's important that we know everything to help Clara." Sophie looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "Sometimes," Sophie began, her voice almost a whisper, "Clara would go out late at night. She thought we were asleep, but I saw her a few times. She wore strange clothes, like a uniform, and carried a briefcase. Andrew felt a chill run down his spine. Do you know where she went? The twins shook their heads. No, said Emma. But once, when she came back, I heard her in the bathroom. She was vomiting and crying. When she came out, I saw marks on her arms, like needle pricks. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with dark implications. Andrew struggled to process this new information. What was Clara doing? What kind of desperate situation had she gotten herself into to support these girls? Thank you for telling me this, Andrew finally said. I know it was hard to break the promise you made to Clara, but this could be crucial to helping her. At that moment, a nurse appeared at the waiting room door. Dr. Andrew? Clara is awake and asking for the girls. Andrew stood up, his heart racing. This could be the moment when they finally got some answers. But as he guided Emma and Sophie down the corridor towards Clara's room, he couldn't help but wonder, were they prepared for the answers they would find? The hospital room was bathed in a soft twilight, broken only by the gentle glow of the monitors and the faint light filtering through the blinds. Clara was sitting up in bed, her tired eyes coming to life as she saw the twins enter. My girls, she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak. Emma and Sophie ran to the bed, hugging Clara carefully, as if afraid she might break at any moment. Dr. Andrew stayed back, watching the scene with a mix of relief and apprehension. How are you feeling? Asked Sophie, her voice trembling. Clara smiled weakly. Better now that you're here. Her eyes then turned to Andrew, a shadow of recognition passing through them. Doctor, do I know you? Andrew stepped forward. Yes, Clara. We met a long time ago, although the circumstances were different. A flash of memory seemed to hit Clara, and she closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When she opened them again, there was a determination in her gaze. Girls, she said softly, can I have a word alone with Dr. Andrew? Emma and Sophie exchanged worried looks but nodded. Andrew guided them out of the room, promising it would be brief. Back in the room, Andrew pulled a chair close to Clara's bed. You remember me, don't you? He asked gently. Clara nodded slowly. You were the doctor on duty that night, the night I lost my baby. The memory hit Andrew like a punch to the stomach. He vividly remembered that night, almost 6 years ago. Clara, 8 months pregnant, had arrived at the emergency room with severe pain. Despite all the efforts of the medical team, the baby did not survive. I'm so sorry, Clara, Andrew said, the guilt he had carried for years resurfacing. We did everything we could. Clara raised a hand, stopping him. Son, it wasn't your fault, Doctor. I understand that now, but at the time I was devastated. I lost my job, my apartment. I ended up on the streets. Andrew listened in silence, realizing he was about to unravel the mystery behind Clara and the twins. That's when I found them, Clara continued, a faint smile lighting up her face. Emma and Sophie, 2 little girls abandoned in a park. They saved me as much as I saved them. But why didn't you seek official help? Andrew asked. Social services, legal adoption. Clara laughed bitterly. Doctor, have you seen how the system works? Those girls would have been separated, thrown into foster homes. I couldn't allow that. They are my second chance, Andrew nodded, understanding the logic behind Clara's actions, even if he couldn't fully approve of them. And what about your work? He pressed gently. The girls mentioned 2 jobs, but the tests show alarming levels of toxicity. Clara's face contorted in an expression of guilt and fear. I did what I had to do to support them. The factory job wasn't enough, so she paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. There was a lab. They paid well for volunteers for drug tests. I knew it was dangerous, but the money, we needed it so much. Andrew felt his heart tighten. The image of Clara, desperate to provide for 2 children who weren't hers, subjecting herself to dangerous experiments, was heartbreaking. Clara, he said softly, I understand why you did it, but your health... I know, she interrupted, tears shining in her eyes. I know it was stupid and dangerous, but look at them, Doctor. Emma and Sophie are everything to me. I would do anything for them. Andrew took Clara's hand, feeling the fragility of her bones under the skin. "We will help you, Clara, but I need to know more about these tests. It could be crucial for your treatment." Clara hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. "They made me sign confidentiality agreements. If I talk..." "Your health is more important than any agreement," Andrew insisted. "Besides, what they did was highly unethical and illegal. They have no defense." Slowly, reluctantly, Clara began to talk about the experiments. Experimental drugs, endurance tests, procedures she barely understood. Andrew listened as horrified, making mental notes that would be crucial for Clara's treatment. When she finished, she was exhausted, her skin even paler than before. Andrew stood up, promising he would be back soon with a treatment plan. In the corridor, he found Emma and Sophie waiting anxiously. He knelt to be at eye level with them. "Your mother is a very brave woman," he said, choosing his words carefully. "She went through a lot to take care of you. Now, it's our turn to take care of her." The girls nodded, silent tears streaming down their faces. Andrew stood up, a new determination in his eyes. He had a long road ahead, treating Clara, protecting the girls, exposing the illegal lab. But looking at the hopeful faces of Emma and Sophie, he knew every challenge would be worth it. Clara's past was filled with secrets and sacrifices, but Andrew was determined to ensure that her future and the girls would be brighter. The hospital buzzed with activity the next morning. Nurses hurriedly pushed medication carts, doctors made their rounds, and the constant hum of conversations and beeping machines filled the air. But beneath this seemingly normal routine, a current of tension and curiosity grew. Dr. Andrew was in his office, the dark circles under his eyes a testament to the sleepless night. He was reviewing Clara's test results for the umpteenth time, desperately seeking a clue that could help her. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. "Dr. Andrew, this is Dr. Oliver from administration. Could you come to my office, please? It's urgent." Andrew sighed, knowing this moment would come. He made his way to the administrative floor, noticing the curious glances and whispers that followed him. News about Clara and the twins was spreading quickly. In Dr. Oliver's office, Andrew found not only the administrator, but also the hospital's head of security and a man he recognized as the institution's lawyer. "Andrew, have a seat," Dr. Oliver said, her tone more serious than usual. "We have some concerns about the case you brought in last night." Andrew straightened in his chair. "Clara needs our help. Her case is complex, but..." "It's not just about the medical case," interrupted the lawyer. "We have information that the patient may be involved in illegal activities, and the children accompanying her. Well, there are questions about their legal guardianship." The head of security cleared his throat. "Additionally, we received a call from a pharmaceutical lab. They claim the patient violated a confidentiality agreement." Andrew felt anger rising in his chest. That lab was conducting illegal and dangerous experiments. Clara was a victim, not a criminal. Dr. Oliver raised a hand, asking for calm. "Andrew, we understand your position, but you have to see this from our point of view. The hospital is in a delicate situation." "And what about the delicate situation of a sick woman and 2 vulnerable children?" retorted Andrew. The silence that followed was tense. Finally, the lawyer spoke. "Dr. Andrew, we understand your concern, but we have to think about the hospital's reputation and the potential legal ramifications." Andrew stood up, his determination evident. "If you aren't going to help, then I'll handle this on my own. Clara deserves treatment, and those girls deserve protection." He left the room, leaving the others in stunned silence. In the hallway, Andrew almost collided with a nurse. "Doctor, I've been looking for you. The girls, they're gone." Andrew's heart froze. He ran to Clara's room, finding her awake and in a panic. "They were here a moment ago," Clara said, her voice trembling. "I heard some nurses talking about social services coming to take them. They must have heard and run away." Andrew tried to calm Clara while his mind raced. He knew he had to find Emma and Sophie before anyone else did. Leaving the room, Andrew encountered a group of reporters in the hospital lobby. Somehow, the story had leaked to the press. "Dr. Andrew, is it true that the hospital is harboring a criminal and 2 kidnapped children?" shouted one reporter. "There are rumors about illegal experiments. Is the hospital involved?" asked another. Andrew pushed his way through the crowd, ignoring the questions. He needed to find the girls. In the parking lot, Andrew spotted movement near his car. Approaching cautiously, he saw Emma and Sophie huddled behind the vehicle. "Girls," he called softly. "It's okay. No one is going to separate you." Sophie looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You promised they won't take us away from Mom." Andrew knelt beside them. "I promise. I'll do everything I can to keep you together and safe." As he guided the girls back to the hospital, Andrew saw a familiar car pulling into the parking lot. It was his old friend, Dr. Richard, a lawyer specializing in children's rights. "Andrew, I saw the news and came as quickly as I could. How can I help?" Richard asked, approaching quickly. Andrew felt a weight lift from his shoulders. With Richard by his side, maybe they had a chance to navigate this legal and ethical minefield. Back at the hospital, they found the lobby in chaos. Reporters, security guards, and curious onlookers mingled in a noisy confusion. In the center of it all, Andrew saw Dr. Oliver trying to calm the crowd. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Andrew saw a flash of understanding and support in the administrator's gaze. Holding Emma and Sophie's hands, with Richard by his side, Andrew pushed through the crowd. He knew the battle was just beginning, but for the first time since this all started, he felt a spark of hope. The news might be spreading like wildfire, but Andrew was determined to ensure that truth and justice prevailed. The clock read 3:17 a.m. when Dr. Andrew was abruptly awakened by a call. He had fallen asleep in a chair in Clara's room, exhausted after hours of discussions with lawyers, hospital administrators, and social workers. "Andrew, it's Richard. We have a problem. The police are on their way with a warrant to take the girls." Andrew's heart raced. He looked at Clara, who was sleeping fitfully, and at the twins huddled on a nearby sofa. The decision was made in seconds. "How much time do we have?" Andrew asked, already moving. 20 minutes, at most." "I have a plan, but you need to get out of there now." Andrew hung up and gently woke Emma and Sophie. "Girls, we need to go, now." The twins, sensing the urgency in his voice, didn't question him. Quickly, they gathered their few belongings. Clara woke up with the movement. "What's happening?" she asked, and her voice weak but alert. Andrew quickly explained the situation. Clara's face paled even more, if that was possible. "Go," she whispered. "Protect my girls." With tears in their eyes, Emma and Sophie hugged Clara. "We'll come back," promised Emma. "Get well, Mom." Andrew felt his heart tighten. He knew he was risking his career, possibly his freedom. But looking at that makeshift family, he knew he was doing the right thing. They sneaked out of the room, Andrew guiding the girls through little-used corridors he knew well after decades of working in the hospital. At every corner, he feared encountering a police officer or a security guard, but the path remained miraculously clear. In the staff parking lot, Richard was waiting for them in an old car. "Quick," he said, opening the doors. As they drove away from the hospital, Andrew saw several police cars arriving at the main entrance in the rearview mirror. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Where are we going?" Sophie asked, her voice small and scared. Richard, focused on driving, replied, "I have a cabin in the mountains. It belonged to my grandfather. No one knows about it except my family. We'll be safe there for a while." Andrew nodded, grateful for his friend's foresight. He turned to the girls. "Everything will be all right. I promise we'll sort this out and get you back to Clara." Emma looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her 12 years. "Why are you doing this for us, Doctor? You barely know us." The question caught Andrew by surprise. For a moment he was silent, reflecting. Finally, he said, "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you and Clara deserve a chance. And because," Moni hesitated, "because you reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place." The rest of the trip passed in relative silence, broken only by Richard's occasional directions and the soft sound of the radio, tuned to a local news station. Sources claim that the renowned Dr. Andrew is involved in the controversial case of a patient accused of kidnapping and participating in illegal experiments. The police are investigating, Richard turned off the radio with a brusque gesture. "Don't worry," he said, noticing Andrew's worried expression. "We'll clear all this up." After nearly 3 hours of driving, they finally reached the cabin. It was a rustic but cozy place, nestled among tall trees and overlooking a serene lake. As Richard prepared something for them to eat, Andrew sat with the twins on the porch, watching the sun rise over the mountains. "We're scared," admitted Sophie, her voice almost a whisper. Andrew put his arms around the girls' shoulders. "I know, and it's okay to be scared. But remember, you are stronger than you think. Look at everything you've already faced." Emma nodded slowly. "Do you think Mum will be all right?" "Clara is a fighter," Andrew replied, hoping to sound more confident than he felt. "And we have excellent doctors taking care of her." Richard appeared on the porch with a tray of sandwiches and hot chocolate. As they ate, he and Andrew discussed the next steps in hushed tones. "We need to expose the labs," Andrew said. "It's the only way to clear Clara's name and ensure the girls stay with her." Richard agreed. "I have some contacts in the press who can help us. But we need to be careful. These labs have powerful connections." As the sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating the lake with golden hues, Andrew felt a mix of fear and determination. He looked at Emma and Sophie, who had fallen asleep on the porch sofa, exhausted after the tense night. In that moment, Andrew reaffirmed his silent promise. He would do everything in his power to protect this makeshift family, to right the injustices they had suffered. The escape in the middle of the night had been just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. But looking at the sleeping girls and the majestic mountains around them, Andrew felt a spark of hope. They would find a way through this, together. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, creating dancing patterns on the rustic cabin floor. Dr. Andrew sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of him, his face a mask of concentration and worry. His tired eyes scanned notes and test results, desperately seeking a clue that could help Clara. Richard entered the kitchen, clutching his cell phone tightly. His tense expression made Andrew look up, bracing for bad news. "I just spoke to my contact at the hospital," Richard said, his voice heavy with concern. "Clara's condition is deteriorating rapidly. The doctors are struggling to treat her without complete information about the experiments she underwent." Andrew ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of the situation pressing on his shoulders. "We need to find out exactly what that lab did to her. Every minute counts now." At that moment, Emma entered the kitchen silently, her keen eyes taking in the heavy atmosphere hanging over the two men. "It's about Mom, isn't it?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Andrew and Richard exchanged looks, debating silently how much they should share with the girl. Finally, Andrew motioned for Emma to sit. "Yes, dear. We're trying to understand better what happened to your mother so we can help her more effectively." Emma bit her lip, clearly debating something internally. Her fingers played nervously with the hem of her shirt as she gathered the courage to speak. There's something we didn't tell before," she said hesitantly, her voice almost a whisper. Andrew leaned forward, his full attention on the girl. "What is it, Emma? Any information could be crucial now. Don't be afraid to tell us." Emma took a deep breath, her eyes briefly meeting Andrew's before fixing on her own hands. "Some nights, when Mum thought we were asleep, I heard her talking on the phone. She mentioned something about Project Phoenix, and always seemed very scared after those calls." Andrew and Richard exchanged surprised looks, a spark of recognition passing between them. "Project Phoenix," Richard repeated, his mind already working on the implications. "That could be the key we've been looking for." As Richard quickly left to make some calls, taking advantage of this new information, Andrew turned to Emma. He could see the fear and uncertainty in the girl's eyes, and his heart ached with the injustice of the situation. "You did very well telling us this, Emma," he said softly, placing a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're very brave. Your mother would be proud." Emma nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I just want Mom to get better," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Andrew hugged the girl, feeling her small body tremble with silent sobs. At that moment, Sophie entered the kitchen, her eyes wide with worry at seeing her sister crying in the doctor's arms. "What's happening?" Sophie asked, running to hug Emma. Andrew gently explained the new information Emma had shared, watching as the two sisters comforted each other. Sophie listened attentively, her face a mix of fear and determination that seemed beyond her years. "I also heard something," said Sophie after a moment of hesitation, her voice low but firm. "Once, I saw Mom hiding some papers. They had a strange symbol on them, like a bird of fire. At the time, I thought it was just a pretty drawing, but now—" Andrew's heart raced. A bird of fire, a phoenix. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, forming a picture that was both enlightening and deeply disturbing. Richard returned to the kitchen, his face a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I got some information about Project Phoenix," he said, lowering his voice and looking around as if afraid of being overheard. "It's a highly secret and, I must add, extremely illegal experiment. From what my contact told me, they're trying to create a drug that can resurrect dead or damaged cells." Andrew felt a chill run down his spine, the implications of this information hitting him like a weight. "My God," he murmured, his medical mind already processing the possible consequences. So they were using Clara as a guinea pig for this experiment. The twins looked from one adult to the other, their young faces marked by worry and confusion. They could feel the tension in the air, even without fully understanding what was being discussed. "What does this mean for Mum?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly, echoing the fear they all felt. Andrew took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. He knew he needed to be honest with the girls, but he also didn't want to scare them more than they already were. "It means we now have a better idea of what's happening to your mother's body," he explained gently. "This can help us find a more effective treatment, to understand better how to help her. But it also means we're dealing with very dangerous people," Richard added somberly, his expression grave. "They won't want this information to come out. Project Phoenix is something they would do anything to keep secret." A heavy silence fell over the cabin, each person absorbing the implications of this revelation. The distant sound of a car approaching broke the tense moment, making everyone turn towards the window. Richard ran to look, his body instantly tense. "Damn," he murmured, his face paling. "It's the local police. Someone must have seen us or reported our presence here." Panic threatened to take over the group, but Andrew remained calm, years of experience in emergency situations kicking in. "Richard, take the girls out the back," he instructed quickly. "Use the trail you showed us earlier, the one that leads to the lake. I'll distract the police." "But what about you?" Sophie asked, clutching Andrew's hand tightly, the fear evident in her eyes. Andrew knelt, looking into the twins' eyes. He could see the terror and worry on their young faces, and his heart ached, thinking of everything these children had already endured. "I'll be fine," he assured them, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "The most important thing now is to keep you safe. I promise we'll meet again soon." With tears in their eyes, Emma and Sophie hugged Andrew quickly, a desperate embrace full of fear and gratitude. Then they followed Richard out the back door, casting worried glances over their shoulders as they disappeared through the back door. Andrew took a deep breath, preparing to face the police. He knew he was risking everything, his career, his freedom, his future. But looking at the girls' backs disappearing into the forest, he knew he was doing the right thing. As he walked to open the front door, Andrew felt a mix of fear and determination running through his veins. Project Phoenix, Clara's condition, the twins, future. Everything was connected in a complex web of secrets, danger, and hope. But now that they had a glimpse of the truth, there was no turning back. The knock on the door echoed through the cabin, sounding strangely final. Andrew straightened his shoulders, took one last deep breath, and turned the doorknob. He was ready to face whatever came next, determined to protect Clara and the girls, no matter the personal cost. The battle for truth and justice was just beginning, and Dr. Andrew was at the center of it, an unlikely guardian of a family that fate had placed in his path. The sound of the knocks on the door echoed through the cabin, each thud reverberating in Andrew's chest like a war drum. He cast one last glance at the empty hallway, where Richard and the twins had disappeared, took a deep breath and opened the door. Two police officers stood on the porch, their faces a mix of suspicion and curiosity. The older one, a middle-aged man with a greying mustache, stepped forward. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sergeant Oliver, and this is Officer Santos. We received a report of suspicious activity at this property. Could you tell us your name and why you are here?" Andrew felt his heart race, but he maintained his composure. Years of dealing with medical emergencies had prepared him to stay calm under pressure. "Of course, officers, my name is Dr. Andrew Miller. I'm a physician at Central Hospital in the city. This cabin belongs to a friend of mine, who kindly lent it to me for a few days of rest." Sergeant Oliver exchanged a look with his partner before continuing. "Dr. Miller, are you aware that there is a warrant out for a doctor matching your description, accused of aiding in the escape of 2 minors? Andrew felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew this moment would come, but still the reality of the situation hit him hard. "Officers, I understand your concern, but I assure you there is an explanation for all this. If you give me a few minutes, I can clarify the situation." Officer Santos, younger and visibly more impatient, stepped forward. "Doctor, we have orders to take you in for questioning." "Where are the girls?" Andrew maintained his calm demeanor, even as he felt panic rising internally. "Gentlemen, the girls are not here, and before we go anywhere, I would like to make a call to my lawyer. I have that right, don't I?" Sergeant Oliver reluctantly nodded. "You're right, Doctor. You can make your call, but we'll stay here to ensure you don't try anything." Andrew took out his cell phone, his hands trembling slightly as he dialed Richard's number. After a few agonizing rings, he heard his friend's voice. "Andrew, is everything all right?" "Richard," Andrew spoke, measuring each word, aware of the officer's attentive gazes. "The police are here. I need you to contact Dr. Oliver at the hospital. Tell her it's time to reveal what we know about Project Phoenix. She will understand." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Richard responded. "Understood. Stay strong, my friend. We'll get you out of this." Andrew hung up and turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, I know you're just doing your job, but there's much more at stake here than you might imagine. Lives are at risk, including that of a gravely ill patient at Central Hospital." Sergeant Oliver frowned, clearly intrigued by the seriousness in Andrew's tone. "What exactly are we talking about here, Doctor?" Andrew took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would change everything. "We're dealing with a case of illegal medical experiments conducted by a clandestine lab. The patient in question, the mother of the 2 girls I supposedly kidnapped, was a victim of these experiments. I'm trying to save her life and protect her daughters." The 2 officers exchanged looks of surprise and skepticism. Officer Santos seemed ready to dismiss the story, but Sergeant Oliver raised a hand, silencing him. "That's a very serious accusation, Dr. Miller. Do you have any proof to support this story?" At that moment, as if fate had orchestrated it, Andrew's cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. With a nod from the officers, he answered, putting it on speaker. "Dr. Andrew?" The voice of Dr. Oliver, the hospital administrator, sounded clear and urgent. "I received your friend's message." "What's happening?" Andrew quickly explained the situation, aware of the officers listening intently to every word. Dr. Oliver listened in silence before speaking. "Andrew, after you left with the girls, I started investigating Clara's case more deeply. What we discovered is disturbing, to say the least. Project Phoenix is real, and it goes far beyond what we imagined. We have evidence of involvement from high-ranking government officials and pharmaceutical executives." Sergeant Oliver intervened, his voice tense. "Ma'am, this is Sergeant Oliver of the local police. Can you explain more clearly what is happening?" There was a pause on the other end of the line before Dr. Oliver continued. "Sergeant, what I'm about to say puts all of us at risk, but it's the truth. Project Phoenix is an illegal experiment aimed at developing a drug capable of regenerating damaged tissues and organs. Clara, Dr. Andrew's patient, was one of the non-voluntary subjects of this project. Her life is in danger, and so are the lives of her adopted daughters if this information leaks out." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with implications. Sergeant Oliver ran a hand over his face, clearly processing the gravity of the situation. Officer Santos looked pale, his previously confident posture now wavering. "Dr. Oliver," Sergeant Oliver finally spoke. "You understand these accusations are extremely serious. We will need concrete evidence." "I understand perfectly, Sergeant," she replied. "I'm already in contact with the federal police and the public prosecutor's office. We have documents, witnesses, and even recordings. But for now, our priority must be to protect Clara and her daughters." Andrew, who had listened to everything in a state of shock and relief, finally spoke. "Sergeant, I know I'm asking a lot of your trust, but now I ask once more. Let me continue protecting these girls until we can ensure their legal safety. They have already suffered too much." Sergeant Oliver was silent for a long moment, his face a mask of internal conflict. Finally, he turned to his partner. "Santos, go back to the car and inform the command that it was a false alarm. Tell them, Dr. Miller is here legally, and there is no sign of the girls." Officer Santos hesitated for a moment but nodded, acknowledging the authority in his voice. Once alone, the sergeant turned to Andrew. "Doctor, I'm putting my career at risk here. I hope you understand the trust I'm placing in you." Andrew nodded solemnly. "I understand perfectly, Sergeant, and I promise you won't regret it." As soon as the officers left, Andrew ran to the back of the cabin, his heart pounding. He found Richard and the twins hiding in a small shed near the lake. "It's all right," he said, seeing the fear in the girls' eyes. "We're safe for now." As he quickly explained the events to Richard, Andrew couldn't help but reflect on how drastically their lives had changed in such a short time. He, a respected doctor about to retire, was now at the center of a conspiracy beyond his comprehension. Emma and Sophie clung to him, seeking comfort in his presence. Andrew hugged them, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had assumed. These girls, who had already suffered so much, now depended on him for their safety and future. "What do we do now?" Sophie asked, her voice small but determined. Andrew exchanged a look with Richard before responding. "Now we fight. We fight for the truth, for justice, and for your right to stay with Clara." As the sun began to set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Andrew felt a mix of fear and hope. The path ahead would be difficult and dangerous, but looking at the confident faces of Emma and Sophie, he knew it would be worth it. The truth about Project Phoenix was about to come to light, and with it, the chance not only to save Clara, but also to expose a network of corruption and unethical experimentation that threatened the very foundations of the medical profession Andrew had sworn to uphold. As night fell over the cabin, Andrew made a silent promise. He would see this through to the end, no matter the personal cost. For Clara, for Emma and Sophie, and for all the others who might have been victims of this dark project, he would fight. The next morning dawned with a mix of apprehension and determination hanging over the cabin. Dr. Andrew, Richard, Jack, and the twins gathered in the small living room, discussing the next steps. Andrew's phone rang, breaking the tension of the moment. "Andrew," Dr. Oliver's voice sounded urgent on the other end of the line. "We have news. The federal police are moving. They want your statement and the girls' statements, but in a safe location. And there's more. Clara woke up." Andrew's heart leaped. "How is she?" "Stable. For now. But she's asking for the girls, Andrew. We need to act quickly. The lab behind Project Phoenix is trying to cover everything up. There have already been attempts to silence witnesses." Andrew felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at Emma and Sophie, who were watching him with anxious eyes. "Understood. What do you suggest?" "Bring the girls to the hospital. We have a secure wing prepared. The federal police will provide an escort." After hanging up, Andrew explained the situation to everyone. Richard immediately began packing, while the twins, a mix of fear and hope on their faces, prepared to see their mother. "Are we going to see Mom?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling slightly. Andrew knelt to be at eye level with the girls. "Yes, we are. But I need you to understand, this could be dangerous. We have to be very careful." Emma, always the braver of the two, nodded firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes, Doctor. We just want Mum back." The drive back to the city was tense. At every turn, Andrew expected to see suspicious cars following them. But, to his relief, they reached the meeting point with the police escort without incident. At the hospital, they were greeted by a battalion of security guards and federal agents. Dr. Oliver was waiting at the entrance to an isolated wing. "Thank you for trusting me, Andrew," she said, guiding them through the corridors. "Then what we discovered about Project Phoenix is terrifying. They were using vulnerable patients as guinea pigs, promising miraculous cures." Reaching Clara's room, Andrew felt the girls tighten their grip on his hands. He took a deep breath before opening the door. Clara was lying in bed, pale but awake. Her eyes lit up when she saw her daughters. "Gas are my girls," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Emma and Sophie ran to hug her, sobbing with relief and love. Andrew and Dr. Oliver watched the scene, moved. "How is she really?" Andrew asked in a low voice. Dr. Oliver sighed. "It's complicated. Whatever they did to her in Project Phoenix altered her physiology in ways we're still trying to understand. She's stable for now, but..." She hesitated. "Andrew, she could be the key to unraveling this entire scheme." At that moment, a federal agent entered the room. "Dr. Miller, we need your statement now. And we have some questions for Mrs. Clara as well." Andrew nodded, reluctant to interrupt the family reunion. But Clara, sensing the seriousness of the situation, called him over. "It's time to tell the whole truth," she said, her voice weak but determined. "For me, for my daughters, and for all the other victims of Project Phoenix." In the hours that followed, Clara revealed the extent of the horror of Project Phoenix. How desperate patients were lured with promises of miraculous cures, how they were subjected to brutal experiments, how those who tried to report it disappeared mysteriously. Andrew, listening to all this, felt a mix of anger and admiration. Anger at those responsible for such cruelty, and admiration for Clara, who had endured all this to protect her adopted daughters. As the investigation progressed, more shocking details came to light. High-ranking politicians, pharmaceutical executives, and even some renowned doctors were involved in the conspiracy. The media soon picked up the story, and the Project Phoenix scandal became national headlines. Andrew found himself at the center of a media storm, hailed as a hero by some and vilified by others. But amid the chaos, something unexpected began to happen. Ordinary people, touched by Clara and the twins' story, began to speak out. Stories of other victims of unethical experiments emerged. A wave of public outrage swept the country, demanding reforms in the healthcare system and greater protection for vulnerable patients. A week after the scandal broke, Andrew was back in Clara's room. She was stronger now, sitting up in bed with Emma and Sophie by her side. "What happens now?" Clara asked, her voice filled with concern. Andrew smiled gently. Well, legally, you're protected as a key witness. As for the girls," he paused, looking at the twins. "The official adoption process has been initiated. With the support we have now, I'm sure it will be approved quickly." Tears of joy filled Clara's eyes. "And Project Phoenix?" "It's being dismantled," Andrew replied. "But more than that, it's sparking real change. The Ministry of Health has announced a complete review of medical research protocols. There's a bill in progress to increase protection for vulnerable patients." Clara nodded, a mix of relief and determination on her face. "There's still a lot to be done, isn't there?" "Yes," Andrew agreed, "but we're not alone in this fight anymore." At that moment, Dr. Oliver entered the room, a smile on her face. "Andrew, I have a proposal for you. The hospital board wants to create a new wing dedicated to the treatment and support of victims of unethical experiments. We'd like you to head it." Andrew was surprised. Just a few weeks ago, he was about to retire, tired and disillusioned. Now he felt revitalized, with a new purpose. Looking at Clara and the girls, and at Dr. Oliver, Andrew felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This case had not only saved a family, but was catalyzing changes that could benefit countless others. "I accept," he said firmly. "But with one condition, I want Clara as the principal consultant. Her experience and courage will be invaluable." Clara looked at him, surprised and moved. I would be honored." As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow through the hospital window, Andrew reflected on the incredible journey he had been on. What began with two desperate girls asking for help on the streets had turned into a movement for systemic change. The power of compassion, combined with the courage to face injustices, had not only saved lives but was reforming an entire system. Andrew knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but looking at the hopeful faces around him, he felt, for the first time in a long while, true hope for the future.